Brahmagyanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva
Krishna. I just want, before Maharaj starts, I just want to let everyone know, because some people were liking this, I'm not going to be posting doing a screen share with the Caitanya Caritamrta classes, and I do have the link posted if you want to follow along on your own. And I apologize if it inconvenienced anybody that I was doing it, but it was kind of an experiment that I had seen others do in their Zoom classes, and so I was trying to replicate it, and I apologize to Maharaj if it caused him any inconvenience. But please, if you want to read along, you can by following, by using the link and following along in the database online. Thank you, Maharaj, for being here, and we appreciate your time and association, and I'll let you take the microphone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Kendra Prabhu for the enlivening kirtan. It was nice. What was the problem? The problem was just that it was bouncing my screen settings. It's not the end of the world. If enough people say they like it, it was only a minor inconvenience for me. So we can bring it back. You can drop a note, I guess, to Tulsi Priya and online, offline, and say, bring it back. And that's the story. Otherwise, you can always split your screen and have your web browser on one side and Zoom on the other, and get essentially the same effect. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We're reading Chaitanya Charitamrta, text 154. Om Jnana Timidandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupapada Mahyam Dadhati Shapadantikam. Vande Hang Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrashatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Svavadutam Prarijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Shahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamstra. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagat Prate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just a reminder of what's going on here in the text. Kaviraj Goswami has been discussing the different gurus, Bande Gurun, Isha Bhaktan, the Diksha Guru and the Shiksha Guru. And in the course of discussing the Shiksha Guru, we find that really all of these gurus are manifestations of Krishna. Krishna is the original Shiksha Guru, and he instructed Lord Brahma. And Kaviraj Goswami in this connection quotes 6 verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, including the Chatushloki Gita, the essential 4 verses of the Bhagavatam. And Srila Prabhupada is going to comment on the content of these verses. He doesn't at all touch upon the argument that Kaviraj Goswami is making. Instead, he comments on the content of each of the verses. So that's what we'll be seeing as we read along. Ritertam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidyad atmano mayam yata paso yata tamaha. What appears to be truth without me is certainly my illusory energy, for nothing can exist without me. It is like a reflection of a real light in the shadows. For in the light, there are neither shadows nor reflections. Purport. In the previous verse, the absolute truth and its nature have been explained. One must also understand the relative truth to actually know the absolute. The relative truth, we remember that Vyasadeva saw Maya, saw Krishna, and Maya standing behind him. The relative truth, which is called Maya, or material nature, is explained here. Maya has no independent existence. One who is less intelligent is captivated by the wonderful activities of Maya, but he does not understand that behind these activities is the direction of the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Material nature is working and producing moving and non-moving beings only by the supervision of Krishna. So the Maya has no independent existence. What appears to be truth, yadartam na pratiyeta, yad pratiyeta, na pratiyeta cha atmani. Whatever appears to be truth, but isn't connected to me, is not factual. Not factual, Prabhupada explains elsewhere, means it exists, but it's not what it appears to be. It appears to be something permanent, it appears to be so many things, but that appearance is not factual. The real nature of Maya, the illusory existence of the material manifestation, is clearly explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. The absolute truth is substance, and the relative truth depends upon its relationship with the absolute for its existence. Maya means energy. Therefore, the relative truth is explained to be the energy of the absolute truth. By the way, those who are interested can read Gopal Gupta, what is it called? Maya in the Bhagavad Purana. I believe that's the title, Maya in the Bhagavad Purana. A very good study. Gopal Hari Prabhu, Dr. Gopal Gupta, has written a study of Maya, what is Maya according to Srimad Bhagavatam. Quite an useful and enlightening book.
What was it called?
I believe it's called Maya in the Bhagavad Purana.
Yes.
Yes, confirmed. Since it is difficult to understand the distinction between the absolute and relative truths, an analogy can be given for clarification. The absolute truth can be compared to the sun, which is appreciated in terms of two relative truths, reflection and darkness. Darkness is the absence of sunshine, and a reflection is a projection of sunlight into darkness. Neither darkness nor reflection has an independent existence. Darkness comes when the sunshine is blocked. For example, if one stands facing the sun, his back will be in darkness. Since darkness stands in the absence of the sun, it is therefore relative to the sun. The spiritual world is compared to the real sunshine, and the material world is compared to the dark regions where the sun is not visible. So there's absolute and relative. We hear the absolute truth. What are we talking about? Absolute truth. Krishna's Satyam Param Dhimhi. The absolute truth. Krishna's absolute. So here the explanation is given. Everything else is dependent on Krishna, and Krishna is not dependent on anything. Any comments or questions so far? Yes.
So we learned from the first canto that the absolute truth has three features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and then everything else is relative truth. What about Krishna's Shaktis, like Radharani, etc.? They're not Bhagavan.
They're also relative to Krishna. Just as this is also Shakti of Krishna, Maya Shakti. So the Maya Shakti is relative to Krishna, dependent on Krishna. But there's some discussion about this. Trying to remember in the Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami talks about this. And he sort of, I think he says what I just said, but then he's got like a counter story also, if I remember. If somebody remembers that.
But it seems funny not to consider Radharani the absolute truth, consider her relative truth.
She is the absolute truth. Prabhupada said
Well,
directly,
he's saying-
when somebody asked him directly, said, is Radharani like, then Prabhupada said, she's Krishna. Radharani is Krishna.
Yeah. Jiva Goswami has discussed this because the energy is dependent on the energetic. So in that sense, dependent means relative. And yet, at the same time, Radharani is so closely identified with Krishna that there's no distinction or separation. But we'd have to look at that. Do you recall that?
Well, what comes to mind is that he gives the analogy of the sun. And so there's different degrees of waters of difference in the sun. There's the reflection, which is the sun. There's the sunshine, which is the sun. And then there's the inner globe, which is the sun. So he compares the Swarup Shakti, which is Radharani, and all Krishna's internal affairs to the inner globe of the sun. So the core, it's like that's right.
Inseparable, because
Inseparable.
you don't have an energetic without energies. Without the energies, there's no meaning to energetic. That's the problem with the Mayavadis. They have an absolute without any qualities, without any energies, so they have nothing at the end. So that's helpful. And then the Maya Shakti is also the energy of the absolute, but yata bhasam yata tamaha, way out there. Even the sunshine,
Yes, the more removed.
the sunshine is, as you said, practically identical with the sun. But when you get to the darkness and you get to the reflection, then you're really external energy. Bahiranga Shakti.
It must, I remember reading somewhere about how they talk about how, I think, maybe what you were talking about, when Caitanya Caritamrta, I believe, where it talks about the absolute truth, and it gets into that very deeply about the different sort of, it gets very deep, I couldn't comprehend it, but it's explained as a science in a very deep way, how it's all manifested in these terms that I had no idea what they meant, but you know, about the internal potency of Krishna. And they talk about Srimati Radharani and depths, and everything. I'm sure you know them.
Well, sure. About her question, I've heard explanation that, and you just mentioned it, that Bhagavan, there's no concept of Bhagavan without Shakti. What makes Bhagavan Bhagavan is its
Shakti.
inconceivable energy. Otherwise, there's no meaning to it.
In fact, I was just hearing Hari Parshad was talking about that Bhagavan realized without Shaktis, that's Brahman.
That's Brahman. Yeah. I was just wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. When you realize the absolute truth, Bhagavan, but without Shakti, well, that's Brahman.
Yes.
Because there's no energy. And when you realize the absolute truth with full energy, now we have Bhagavan. You were going to say something. Tulsi Priya has a hand there.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. I had a question just to maybe confirm my own understanding. This idea of reflection and darkness, it seems to go hand in hand, but they seem to be opposite to each other. A reflection casts light, although not directly, and darkness blocks light. But it seems that, you know, if you have a mirror, the shiny side that reflects the light, there's also the other side of the mirror. If you're on the other side of the mirror, it blocks the light. And I'm just wondering who's doing the reflecting. And my understanding is that our minds are doing the reflecting. We're either actually reflecting Krishna in relationship and devotional service, or we're blocking him by turning away from him. So this sort of fine line, you know, which is, I guess, what they mean by marginal, is we can either reflect Krishna or we can turn away from Krishna. And on one side, there's the light, and on the other side is the darkness.
That may work. I think the analogy given here is just simpler. It doesn't extend that far. You know, what's the reflection and what's the darkness, and it's in our mind, and you know, just doesn't go there. It's just essentially 2 degrees of secondary manifestations. One is darkness, and the other is a glimmer of light. And you could take it and extend the analogy, but the Bhagavatam doesn't.
I guess I'm asking though, are we considered the ones who are doing the reflecting or the blocking?
We, the ones who are doing the reflecting or the blocking. The text doesn't say that. And I haven't seen an affirmation of that. In one sense, the mode of goodness gives you a little reflection, and the mode of ignorance gives you, you know, deep darkness. So then you can say it's the illusory energy that's doing that. In fact, that's what it says. It's the illusory energy. Yata bhasa yata. So the illusory energy itself is compared to an entity that has these 2 features, reflection and darkness. And where's the illusory energy coming from? That's coming from Krishna. So finally, you can say that it's Krishna who's controlling it. But then again, we're subject to the illusory energy in various degrees because of our own minds and senses and so on.
isn't that illusory energy a reciprocation with our desire to be separate from him?
Yeah, that's also there.
It's sort of, it's one
Yeah,
thing
it's
gives
a
rise
relation.
to another.
Mhm, mhm. The chat box has been busy. Let's see what it has there. First, it has, thanks to Praveen, the verse that saying what Vyasadeva saw. Now let me get there. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite male apashat purusham purnam mayam chatadapashrayam. Thus Vyasadeva fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And thus he saw the absolute personality of Godhead, along with his external energy, which was under full control. Now, Vijay Krishna has a question. If truth to be truth needs Krishna to be present, why is it that the material world is also categorized as being the kingdom of God? I do live in the material world, and I do not remember seeing Krishna around playing his flute. Well, if truth to be truth needs Krishna to be present, well, Krishna is the truth. So wherever Krishna is present, the truth is present. And wherever Krishna is not present, the truth is not present. It appears to be truth. But the material world is also categorized as being truth or being the kingdom of God because it's Krishna's energy. So it's also a manifestation of Krishna. But why does it appear, and this goes to Tulsi Priya's point, why does it appear to be something other than it is? Because of our minds. That which appears to be separate from me. Why does it appear to be separate from me? Because of our vision. It's not separate, it's Krishna's energy. But it appears to be. It appears to be different from Krishna. It appears to be separate from Krishna. It appears to be independent of Krishna. Why? Because we want it to appear that way.
There's an interrelation between desire for sense gratification and the inability to perceive.
Yeah, we desire sense gratification, so we desire to perceive an independent material energy that we can exploit. And we want to see, we want God blocked from our vision. That's darkness. Yeah. Okay, I hope that's all okay. Krishna is present. Krishna says that, all these Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyaktu murtina. I'm present everywhere in my unmanifest form. That's why you don't see the flute, the peacock feather, all the other personal features of Krishna, because it's his unmanifest form. He's there, but he's not manifest. Krishna says, time I am. He's present as time. But time is the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. So when time is going by, everyone sees time going by, but we don't see Krishna. But the Krishna conscious person also sees that time is Krishna. What is it? His movements are the passing days of time.
All right. Now, when you say time I am, and also Krishna said of aquatics on the shark, and sage weird like it. What is that? How are we to actually? I mean, it just seems like it's an abstract statement in a way because it's not actually Krishna. What's he trying? What message is?
It's a meditation. That among fish, I'm the shark. Among mountains, I'm Meru. Among this, I'm that. So it's now you have to meditate. How is this Meru, a manifestation of Krishna? How is this shark? Or it's an appreciation. The shark is the best among the aquatics. So it represents Krishna. Atava bahunaitena kim gyaten tavarjana. What is that? No. Yad yad vibhuti mat sattvam srimad rujitameva. Tat tadeva bhagaccha tvam mamate jam susam. Whatever you see that's beautiful, wonderful, powerful, is born from a spark of my splendorous energy. Atina says she's confused. Isn't Brahman Krishna's energy, therefore Shakti? So how is Krishna without Shakti, Brahma? Brahma is sometimes described as Krishna's energy. Prabhupada describes the Brahma Jyoti as being Krishna's effulgence. But in this context, Brahma is the absolute truth without energies. Advaya Brahma. Brahma, in Brahman, the most important thing for the impersonalists, there's no duality. There's no manifestation of any individual anything. So if you have energy, then you have duality. So there's, in the impersonal conception, there's no energy in Brahma, nor can Brahma be an energy of something else. And in fact, that is the statement that Janmadyasya, the Brahman is the source of everything. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, wherever you see this word Brahma, substitute Krishna. Wherever you see Brahma, substitute Krishna. Because Brahma means the absolute truth, the greatest, the ultimate reality. So that ultimate reality is Krishna. Yajganam Advaya. Realized in three different features. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan. So as far as I can say, it appears that the depiction of Brahman as energy, what would you say about that? Brahman as energy. It's not exactly energy, but Prabhupada sometimes describes it as energy.
Saying Brahman, the word Brahman.
Yeah. He refers to the Brahma Jyoti as Krishna's energy. And the Brahma Jyoti is really nothing but Brahma. But the Jyoti, the light, sometimes Prabhupada refers to it, but when he gets down to this kind of analysis, Brahman is simply Krishna, imperfectly understood. So I hope that makes things less confusing. Or is it's all energy, so non-dual? No, not really. Although they may speak of, energy, the energy, the one energy, but really when you're talking about in the impersonal conception, it's not really energy, because energy implies a source of emanation. Energy comes from something. So perhaps imprecisely that term is used, the energy all around us, and that sort of common way of speaking. But in the serious Mayavadi conception, when you get down to being a Mayavadi scholar, there's simply the absolute truth in which there's no energy and energy, even energy and no energy, or energy and source of energy. This is all duality. So there's simply the absolute, in which there's no distinction between Shakti and one Shakti and another Shakti, or No, it's not seen as Shakti, because Shakti means just like Parvati is the Shakti of Lord Shiva. So there's no source of Shakti and Shakti. There's only the absolute Advaya Brahma. Eka Brahma Dutiya Nasti. There's only Brahma, there's nothing else. Yeah. Hope that clears things up. Prabhupada says, so the lesson is we should not treat Radharani as ordinary girl or Krishna as ordinary man. They are the supreme absolute truth. Yes, that has to be. And that's clear again and again from Chaitanya Charitamrta, that Radha and Krishna together are the absolute truth. Because the absolute truth without energy is meaningless. And the energy without the source is also meaningless. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is focusing our attention on Radha Krishna, the absolute truth with his energies. I see an Atina hand. Is there a follow-up, Atina?
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranams. Thank you for the explanation. I am sorry. I think I'm more confused now. Just going off of what your last explanation. So the Mayavadis don't even believe that we exist then because we're Krishna's Shakti. Right? Or they
that they think that our existence as individual little beings is illusory. Aham Brahmasmi. Now I'm thinking I'm George Wilson from Georgia, but really I'm Brahma. And nothing else exists but Brahma. So I exist, but what does it mean that I exist? It means that I exist as the absolute truth, which doesn't necessarily mean, it can mean, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm God. It just means that the absolute in the final analysis is just one undifferentiated entity. And you can't even say I'm part of that entity. I am that entity because nothing else exists but that entity. So that's their take on it. There's only Brahma, which is in which there's no distinct, there's no parts and whole, there's no energy and energetic, there's no this aspect and that aspect. There's only an absolutely homogeneous Brahma. So we exist, but not as individual living beings. That's Maya, according to the impersonalist school. Is that okay?
Thank you. That seems, I guess, I can follow that logic but then saying that you and I are exactly the same and these bodies right, this whole experience is just an illusion. But then what about the consciousness of me even thinking that I'm existing? That's, if we were one, then I could feel the air brushing on your skin, but I can't. I'm only aware of, the air on my skin. So if we're all one, then I would be 100% completely aware of everyone's feelings, experiences, minds, and right. So I guess I still don't.
You wouldn't even be independently aware of anything, because that implies a subject-object distinction. There's the object of which we're aware, and the subject who's aware of them. That's Maya. Even that, my independent existence as an individual experiencer. No. That's Maya too. So when I'm liberated, it's not that I'll experience what you're experiencing. None of us will really be experiencing anything, because experience means there has to be an experiencer and an experience. That's duality. So you can see how far they take this.
They have to work really hard.
Therefore, it's called Kevaladvaita. absolute oneness. Anything that conflicts with oneness, there can't be conflict in duality. So there anything that's Rabindra Prabhu tells about an incident where he was having a discussion in which he disagreed with an impersonalist, and the man said, "Man, you're creating duality."
So they don't even believe of splitting into individual souls. That's not even a thing.
No, that's just an illusion.
Crazy. Okay. Well, technically, we're non-dualists too, but our
Prabhupada has to deal with them in the second chapter, how they try to explain away natve baham jatu nasam, that I always existed, you always existed. So the Mayavadis can't just accept it as it is. They have to make it, Brahman always existed. But I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, thank you. No, that's okay. Right. So, well, I was saying we're also non-dualists, but it's how we explain or understand non-dualism. But
we also have non-dualism, but it's not absolute.
right.
We say that there's abhinatan namanam, there's no difference between Krishna and Krishna's name. There's no difference between Krishna and Radharani, but there's also difference. We're not the hardcore radical Kevala Dvaitis. That's the Shankara school. We have Tajjnanam Advayam. The Brahmeti, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, they're all one substance. And finally, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Krishna is everything. So we have absolute oneness, but with varieties. Therefore, Ramanujacharya has given his philosophy, Vishishta Advaita. Advaita, but with specific particularity. There are particular energies within the oneness. Or we have Shuddha Dvaita, purified oneness. And Dvaita. The Vaishnavas have all, in different ways, presented their an alternative to Shankaracharya. That Shankaracharya, you're just seeing absolute oneness, and you can't explain, finally, how if everything is one, there could be this thing called Maya. Everything's one, but we don't see it because we're an illusion. Well, okay, but where did illusion come from if everything is one? That's the Achilles heel of Mayavad philosophy. Everything's one, but we don't realize it because of Maya. Well, wait a second. What is this Maya thing?
Why don't you wear a cotton ball?
Yeah, why do you wear cotton balls? What is this Maya thing? If everything's one, how can there be the absolute truth and Maya? That's two. So that doesn't work. That's the ultimate problem of Mayavad philosophy. So therefore, the Vaishnavas, they have oneness also, but not this, what's the word? Radical and untenable oneness. Oneness that doesn't work. Oneness in which the one is just stripped of everything so you can have oneness.
What is Pradhan? How does Pradhan?
Pradhan is one aspect of the material energies. The Pradhan and Prakriti are the two features of material energy. When the material elements, the total aggregate of the material energy of the material elements is called Pradhan. I always think of it as like a warehouse of ingredients. The total ingredients of the material nature is Pradhan, but Pradhan doesn't do anything. But when the Lord activates the material energy by his glance, then it becomes Prakriti.
Is that the Brahman energy?
Everything's Brahman, Sarva Kalavidam Brahma.
So in essence, this is Brahman.
Yes. And therefore Prabhupada says in the commenting on Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagno, Brahmanahuta. Like Krishna consciousness is the process of restoring everything to its Brahman nature. He says it a different way, but essentially making everything Brahman again. Like it's become non-Brahman, apparently, because of being separated from Krishna in our vision. And when we connect it with Krishna by offering everything in yajna, now it becomes, the offering becomes Brahma, the person who's doing the offering becomes Brahma, the Brahmarpanam, Brahma, the ghee becomes Brahman. So everything's being turned into Brahma. Or when we chant Hare Krishna, we're re-spiritualizing everything. So Times Square becomes restored to the Brahman nature because there's chanting of the holy name, there's devotees. So Krishna's presence is being invoked. So it's being elevated to the Brahman platform. At least some are able to see that. We take apples and offer them to Krishna. So now the apple is regaining its spiritual nature. You taste it, it's prasadam. So everything is Sarva Kalavidam Brahma. Everything is Brahma. There's nothing but Brahma. But yadartam yat pratiyeta, tadartam yat pratiyeta, niritertam yat pratiyeta, not pratiyeta chapman. Whatever seems to be independently meaningful is meaningless. But when you connect it with Krishna, then it has meaning. And Prabhupada's example, the 0 and then 2 zeros, 100 zeros. But you put 1, then now there's meaning.
Actually, let's prove that statement you were mentioning
Srila Goswami?
from Prabhupada in the Prabhupada 424.
Oh, yes.
The word Brahma means spiritual, he said.
The word Brahma means spiritual.
The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyoti. His spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in the Brahma Jyoti, but when the Jyoti is covered by illusion, Maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth regains its spiritual quality.
Matter dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth regains its spiritual quality. So it's Brahma. Where Prabhupada said, we're sitting on Krishna, where everything is Krishna. But we don't see that it's Krishna. Or the same, But when it's offered to Krishna, let me see, here's Krishna. Or Brahma. Brahma, again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, wherever you read Brahma, supply Krishna. That's what it means. Krishna is the greatest.
I love the one where Prabhupada says, I am God, you're God. I am kicking God. He said, I kick on your face with boots. He said, stop me if you can. I'm kicking God.
Yeah. That's a sort of, what would you say, an emphatic version of the philosophical point that, all right, we're all God, but then there's a hierarchy. There's a superior, I'm a small God, and Ted Soros is a big God. He's got more money than I do. So He's God and I'm God, but he's a bigger God. Then there's a bigger God than him and a bigger God than him. Finally, you come to the biggest God, that's Krishna. So still everyone can say that I'm God, but there's a hierarchy of gods. So Prabhupada's the kicking God, and they're the ones who get his boot.
He said the boots that in I found this photo. He said, I'm kicking God, I kick on your face with boots.
With boots, yes.
It's like that emphatic, not just kicking you, I have boots on kicking you.
Emphatic and more emphatic. Okay, Tina's not going to wait for. She sees I'm quicker on the chat box than the hands. So to check, are we saying that this Krishna without Shakti is Brahman? Is that our philosophy, or is that Mayavadi philosophy? If it's our philosophy, how do you explain that Brahman is Brahmajyoti, Krishna's effulgence, and the souls in Brahmajyoti also help light up the spiritual sky? It's Shakti. Yes. Well, our Krishna, when we speak of Krishna or Brahma, or when we speak of Bhagavan, Bhagavan means Parasya Shakti Vividaiva Shruyate. He's got all sorts of energies. Material energy, spiritual energy, marginal energy. So that's the complete picture, Bhagavan. Now the impersonalists are also seeing Bhagavan, because there's nothing other than Bhagavan, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. But in their vision, Bhagavan has no energy. The absolute truth has no energy. That's duality. There's only the absolute, without variety, beyond a nama, a rupa, no name, no form, no qualities, no. So that is Krishna, because there's nothing other than Krishna, but Krishna perceived without energies. Brahman and Bhagavan and Paramatma are all identical. Vadanti tat tattva vidas, tattvam yajganam advayam. The sages agree that the absolute truth is one non-dual substance. Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaneti. Realized as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. It's not that there's a Brahman and then there's a Bhagavan and then there's a Paramatma and there's a Bhagavan. Three different absolutes. Prabhupada gives the example of a mountain. From a distance, you see this big, hazy shape. That's the mountain. Then you get closer and you start to see that it's got, valleys, and it's got, green areas and brown areas and all of that. Then you get right into it. You see there's poplar trees and there's pine trees and there's a river and there's deer and there's so many things on the mountain. But it's not that there are three different mountains. One has deer and poplar trees and rivers, and the other, no, that doesn't have that. But when you don't see those things because you're at a distance, you're seeing the mountain. The same mountain that the person who's seeing all those individual details is seeing, but you're seeing vaguely. And he's seeing the particularities. He's seeing all the manifestations. So Brahman and Paramatma and Bhagavan, they're not three different things. They're the same thing, but realized to a different extent, different degree, or from different aspects. The Brahmavadis can't realize the personality of Godhead with energies because that ruins their picture, or because they're not advanced enough to understand that picture. They can't comprehend how there could be oneness and yet an energetic and energies. They have to have absolute oneness because they want things to be simple. So they can't see all these distinctions. But the more advanced student can see all these things. It's just like in mathematics, the advanced students can see all these weird things that would that seem to the beginning arithmetic student to be contrary to fact. I'm not a mathematician, so I can't cite you examples, but there's all sorts of stuff that they look at it and say, that's not right. The arithmetic student, that can't be right. But the advanced student says, yes, that's standard. Panchatattva says, Maya has covered them, even though they say we are all Narayan. So Maya, or illusion, is greater than Narayan according to their philosophy. Yeah, we're all God, or we're all the absolute. But this Maya thing has bewildered us.
They say we're having a pastime. This is our pastime, being under illusion.
And probably would say my pastime is to kick on your face with boots. Yes, Tina, you have another question?
Thank you so much. Sorry, so in summary, that is our philosophy then?
Yes, it's our philosophy. Is it our philosophy? Let's say, are you saying that Krishna without Shakti is Brahman? And Krishna with Shakti is also Brahman. Brahman also ultimately has Shakti. Brahman means the greatest. So Krishna is the greatest. Param Brahma. He's Brahma. But the realization of Brahma without Shakti is what we usually call Brahman realization. So Brahmeti, it's realization of Bhagavan, but without his Shaktis. It's realization of the mountain, but without the details. It's just a vague, hazy shape. So we also accept that there's this vague, hazy shape, which is the mountain. But we understand that when you get closer, you're going to see more. And they think we've seen it. This is what a mountain is. It's a vague, hazy shape. And it's big.
Aren't there good Maya bodies and bad Maya bodies? I mean, not Maya bodies, wrong word, but people who are, somebody was talking about in class about how there are people who are on the path and they're different than people who are, what we call Maya bodies.
You were making a distinction between Brahma bodies and Maya.
Brahma bodies, Maya bodies.
Okay, we'll come to that. Tina says, but the souls in the Brahmajyoti are Shakti. Yeah, we see that. But the less advanced students of the Absolute Truth, they don't see that. They don't see that there's this Shakti and source of Shakti. They don't get that. They think that's an illusion. Because the Absolute Truth should be free from duality. This is a duality that Brahman has Shakti. If Brahman has a second thing, that can't be. They can't go beyond this little fence of theirs, that there has to be non-duality. And as soon as there's form, as soon as there's qualities, as soon as there's individuality, as soon as there's energy, then there's duality. So they can't go any further than that. So Brahman has Shakti. No, it can't have Shakti because it implies duality. But the Upanishads say, Prasya Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate. The Absolute Truth has all sorts of energies. So when we realize the Absolute Truth with his energies, then we're seeing the complete feature of Bhagavan. And when we realize the Absolute Truth without energies, then we're only seeing the impersonal aspect, which we generally call Brahma. Is that okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
This about Brahmavadis and Mayavadis. Generally, I've seen that distinction someplace. Generally, Prabhupada just throws them all together. They're all Mayavadis. They're all Mayavadis. The usual distinction is between the voidists and the impersonalists. the Shankarite Mayavadis and the Buddhist Mayavadis. But everybody's a Mayavadi, all of these folks. That's the usual thing.
What about like the Four Tomorrows? They were,
Yeah, Prabhupada, you know, he throws them all. They're all, you know, they were Mayavadis, but impersonalists. That's Prabhupada's term, impersonalist. He just doesn't, it's rare that he makes a distinction. You know, just impersonalists. I was also an impersonalist. They were, you know, the Kumars were impersonalists. Everybody was an impersonalist. Shukadeva was an impersonalist. But then he became attracted. But Prabhupada, hardly you can find a place. There's maybe one or two places where he makes this distinction about Brahmavadis and Mayavadis. But generally, anyone who's thinking that the absolute truth is impersonal, they're all impersonalists for practical purposes, Mayavadis. Mayavadi is, I think Hari Parshad Prabhu has made this point that Mayavadi is kind of a disparaging term.
yes, it is.
You know, it's kind of like, yes, a disparaging term. You know, you're the guys who think everything's Maya. So, so the Mayavadis. But although but we can make the distinction, and Mataji made that distinction in the class and gave evidence for it, Brahmavadis and Mayavadis. But rarely did Prabhupada, you just don't hear it much. Brahmavadi, Mayavadi, they sort of get interchangeably used. And Brahmavadi hardly uses much anyway. It's impersonal as Mayavadis. We're at 7:01. Jagar Sundar, quick comment from Tulsi Priya.
Maharaj,
Yes.
I just wanted to say that book you were mentioning by Gopal Gupta, you can access it online through Oxford Scholarship Online, and I think you can borrow it through your own local library or you know, public library if anybody wants to try for that. I just looked it up real quick and found it.
Yeah, I think it's an open text, which means you can actually download it.
Yeah, because the book itself costs $75. So
yeah, maybe. Of course, everything is one, so there's no difference between $75 and $1. Still, you might prefer just to download the book, which I think you can do. It's open access. Jagar Sundar says the example of a train, villagers send, this is Prabhupada, villagers send 3 people to find out what is train. One person saw a headlight and an engine and concluded that train is light. Another person waited a little longer and reported train is many compartments. But the third person saw everything. When train stopped at the platform, he saw people in compartments, engine, driver, everything. So
That's the first analogy that Prabhupada gave us.
Yeah.
We've all repeated that
a few times, yeah. Okay. So thank you all very much. Tomorrow, our Bhagavatam session resumes. And next week on Thursday, we'll continue with Caitanya Caritamrta. Thanks to all. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.